Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Mark Henry. I'm a senior engineer with opMantic's North American office located in Charlotte, North Carolina. Today we're going to be talking about how to use opCharts to build an interactive dashboard that uses a building floor plan. Just a little bit of light housekeeping before we get started. We will be sending you the recording of this session. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the GoToWebinar chat window or questions panel. So depending on what operating system you have, what version of GoToWebinar you have installed, either the chat panel or the questions panel will be available to you. Feel free to ask questions anytime. We do have a staff here who will be watching that with me while I'm doing the presentation and helping formulate answers for everyone or getting the questions to my attention so I can make sure that I address them during the session. We do have a very short exit poll, so whenever you leave the session or once the session closes, it's just 3 very short questions. Please take a moment of your time and complete that exit survey. We do read every response to the exit survey. It helps me become a better presenter. It helps opMantic select better, more relevant topics for everyone as well, and it helps us improve the quality of the topics that we deliver. So during today's session, we're going to talk about how to size and format background images for use in network maps and opCharts. We're going to talk about how to add those background images. There's a couple of different ways that you can do it, whether it's from copying files directly into a subfolder on the server, or whether it's using the GUI to import images one at a time. We're going to talk about how to create a network map, add your background image to it, then overlay devices and link lines to that. We'll also be talking about how to then take that network map and add that to a dashboard, whether that's an existing dashboard or a brand new dashboard, and how to build out a dashboard that's usable for you. This fits in very solidly with the ITSM, the IT Service Management Maturity Model, which of course is part of the ITIL process standards. It helps reinforce level 1 as far as initiating problem management, alerting and event management, measuring component availability up and down time. It also goes into being proactive, helping to set thresholds, predicting problems, and then into level 3 where you're actually measuring and reporting on service availability. At the end of the day, having dashboards that are very, very usable for your engineers, whether it's in a NOC site or it's just simply an individual engineer sitting at a desk looking at a computer screen and trying to understand what's happening across their network. Having very graphical, visual dashboards and aids can usually help engineers go very, very quickly from a 50,000 foot, there's an issue with a service or an application, very quickly down to what the impacting interface, device, or connection point is. Today, there are really 2 components out of opMantic's solution set that really drive to this. The core, of course, is NMIS, which is our performance and fault monitoring system. And then bolting in on top of that is opCharts, which is our commercial dashboarding solution, which can be used both by internal engineers, but it can also be used for customer portals. A few references for you. For those of you who aren't fast enough to copy down all of these links or do a screenshot, this presentation as a PDF is actually attached to the GoToWebinar. So if you go to the GoToWebinar handouts panel, you can actually download today's presentation as a PDF. If you're viewing this webinar on opMantic's YouTube channel or on opMantic's Learn portal off opMantic.com, you should be able to go to opMantic.com and get this resource as a free downloadable for you as well. So again, go to opMantic.com, select Learn from the menu, find this under Webinars, and then there'll be a download link on that webinar presentation. So just to give you a feel for what we're looking to build, this is just a quick screenshot off of opMantic's demo server. We'll actually take a live look at this later on today, but you'll see on the far left-hand side there are a few controls on this dashboard. In the center, we have an elevation of an actual office tower where we've included a few routers, a couple servers, and some link lines showing performance and connectivity between a couple of floors. some devices down on the ground floor, and then also a web connection. And then over on the right-hand side, you'll see that we've added a floor plan, and we've added some devices in here as well. So we have an ESXi server on the far left. We've got a couple of routers. We've got a router, a switch, another server, and we've got a Wi-Fi access point in a hallway. So this is the type of piece that we talk about when we talk about laying out a floor plan and being able to provide insight into as far as graphically where devices are and how they are performing. We've actually used this in a couple of examples now with large clients who have really Wi-Fi access points throughout the floor and no real wired connections other than in their server room. And so being able to have the Wi-Fi access points throughout the floor, being able to see how well they're performing, whether they're up, down, degraded, etc., and then being able to connect into those points and see exactly how many users are connecting to each of those points as well can be critical to helping troubleshoot performance problems, especially in that kind of a layout or situation. So let's talk about image sizing and format considerations. So opCharts will accept pretty much any type of bitmap or vector type image. So you could use a bitmap or a BMP. You could use a JPEG. We do recommend PNGs, PNGs, as vector images or any other vector image type format because they scale well. They're designed to stretch, to zoom in, zoom out, and still render well on a computer screen. So we do recommend vector images, and again, PNG font format gives you not only good resolution, good scaling, but it also gives you small file size as well. It's important to understand that images remain proportional to the container they're in. So if you have an image that's very much a landscape or a horizontal image, it's wider than it is tall, and yet you put it in a very narrow, tall box, it's going to be very small. Because the way that opCharts works is it starts the image to fit the box that you put it in, and then you can actually scale in or out, and we'll talk about what that looks like in a moment. In fact, let me just switch over now to opCharts. This is the opCharts default dashboard. This is also called the nodes view. It gives us a full list of all the devices on our server. And I'm going to take a look at a specific dashboard. So I'm going to go Views, Dashboards. And then I'm going to select the building monitor dashboard. Now, this is a dashboard I built earlier today. opCharts doesn't come pre-configured with any pre-built dashboards. We do have dozens of what we call views. So we have access into nodes, interfaces, monitored services, top end, business services, etc. But if you want to create a custom dashboard, they'll be listed here. And a dashboard is comprised of collections of components or panels. And so each of these panels, the tower elevation in the center and the tower floor plan on the right, each of those are containers. Those are actually network maps. You'll notice on the tower elevation that the graphic is very, very small. I mentioned a moment ago that irregardless of the size of the container on the dashboard, the graphic starts at its default size. Now I can zoom in. I'll unselect or uncheck zoom lock at the top of that component. I'll move my cursor over the center of the image, and I'm just going to use my mouse wheel to back out. Now, zoom in and zoom out features inside opCharts is dependent on your mouse location. So my mouse is in the center of that panel. If I move my mouse to the top left corner and I zoom out, you'll notice that it's zooming towards that corner. So if you want to zoom proportionally, or if I want to get a little closer to that right-hand elevation, there we go. And of course, each of these pieces is live. So I can click on each of these components, each of these individual devices, and I have a link line here labeled LAN. It's the fast Ethernet 00 line. And you can see the percentage of usage on that. And these link lines will get thicker as there's more usage across that line, whether it's in or out of that connection. It'll turn red if that connection drops. It'll be gray if there's been no traffic on that line at all. So just a couple of pieces here. But again, when you're looking to size your graphics, you want to size them appropriately for the type of monitor or the type of display. So if you're going to be putting this onto a desktop with a smaller monitor, smaller graphics are good as far as pixel size, horizontal and vertical pixel size of the image, and also pixel depth, or DPI. So you can have lower numbers in your DPI resolution as well. Overall, again, if you're starting with a vector image, keeping in mind the size of your end display, whether it's a desktop or a big 55 or 60-inch monitor on the wall, you want to be able to use a graphic that is going to show up and look good on that. It's important to start with a larger graphic. Physically, the bigger graphic that you have will give you a better resolution. However, this is a web application. And so when you have really, really big, detailed graphics, what you end up happening generally is you actually have a file size that's much larger. And so your browser still needs to pull a copy of that image from the web server down to your down to the desktops that's actually rendering the display, just like my desktop, my MacBook Pro is rendering this display for me. It's reaching out to our demo server, which happens to be in Brisbane, Australia, and pulling these images across the internet to my desktop and then rendering it. And so for the first time, for these to display, if the graphics are very, very large, as far as a file size goes, if the graphic is very large, it'll take longer for this, for the image to draw the first time. Let's head back over to PowerPoint for a minute. So again, keeping in mind the concept of portrait versus landscape images, generally speaking, you want to try to avoid square images just because of the way that opCharts is designed and the way the containers are laid out. All of the containers have reserved space at the top for a title bar within the container. Because of that, no container is actually square. They're generally either more portrait or more landscape, in which case you'll want to try to keep your images proportional in one way or the other. Anytime an image doesn't fit properly within opCharts will scale it until either the horizontal edges or the vertical edges meet the edge of the container that it's in, and then it fills the rest of the space with white space. So if your image has a colored background, you'll actually see white borders around the tops or the sides of the image. One word of caution, you really do want to make sure that the background images that you're using are either in the public domain or that you're using them according to the owner's license agreements. So for example, one of the things that we often run into is when it comes to floor plans for buildings, in many cases, the floor plans are actually provided by architects, and the architect that created that floor plan actually owns the copyright to the image. And without that architect's permission or the owner of that copyright's permission, you really can't repurpose that for your own business purposes. Even if you're not selling the image, even if you're not selling the service, even if nobody else is seeing it, you're still using it in a way that could potentially, step on that individual's copyright, and they would have the, opportunity to take legal recourse. So our recommendation always is to try to either create the image yourself, create a floor plan of your own, do it in whatever graphics program you want to, or to find whoever owns that copyright image and get their permission. So we're going to actually work with a couple of different floor plan images today. There are lots of ways to get floor plans from your organization or from the organization that owns the building. A couple of ways that we found, we've gone to the rental agencies that manage renting office space. In almost every case, those rental agencies will have some kind of electronic image of the floor, of a floor plan of the building, of the different floors. You'll see a couple of examples here. We actually went to the building management company. In this case, it happens to be a TAPCO, who manages the buildings that we actually occupy currently here in Charlotte. And we went to a TAPCO, and I simply laid out what we were doing. I talked through it with a couple of their people, and they sent me several floor plans for different buildings. They sent me actually entire campus floor plan as well that we'll show you in a minute. And all of that they provided free of charge, and they gave us our permission to use it both in this presentation and also in demonstrations moving forward. So you'll want to look around and see what's available to you. In most cases, if your company owns the building, you may have an operations office or a building management office you can contract or you can contact. In most cases, they'll have an electronic version of the floor plan of the building. You may be able to take a paper version of it and scan it in, turn it into a graphical image, and then cut down and modify that or rebuild that from that scanned in image as well. So lots of different opportunities for you to get an image for the floor plans for the buildings that you're looking for. So there are a couple of different ways of getting those graphic images from your desktop onto the opCharts server. The easiest way to do it is to go to the actual server itself and actually just drop the images into the directory that's here. So images can be copied directly into user local OMK public OMK maps _ background _ directory. And yes, we could have made that longer, so don't tempt us. The other way to do it, and really the easiest way, is to go through the opCharts GUI. The GUI will allow you to assign the image a custom name. You can upload one image at a time. Currently, the opCharts GUI will allow you to upload to add an image, but you can't replace the image, and you also cannot delete images. You have to actually go to the server and delete them from the command line using a CLI command. If you drop the images into Maps background directory, you can, of course, move as many images as you want at once, depending on how you're going to move them, whether it's SCP or some kind of a DevOps process, or just dragging and dropping them using something like PuTTY. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So I'm here in opCharts, and in the top right-hand corner and along the menu here, I'm going to select System, Files, and you'll see down at the bottom, we have several images in here now. We have a lot of different icons that are here that can be referenced by the system as well. There are some building floor plans. So you'll see, for example, here's the building floor plan you just saw a moment ago on that dashboard. And here's one of the elevations with the two sides of the building, front and the side. We've got a third elevation as well. We've got a few more pieces here. One of them is the University Executive Park, the UEP ATAPCO. So this is actually the development that we're in. We're actually in building 301. You'll see that we'll be using this this floor plan later. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to import a new floor plan. So in the top left, I'm going to select under resource type, maps background. That makes sure that this image goes into the correct subdirectory. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it 301 fourth floor plan. So we're at 301 McClellan. This is going to be the fourth floor. I'm going to browse. There's my floor plan. I'm going to hit open and then upload. It'll take a moment. The screen will refresh. And then if I scroll down, I should see the new floor plan down here at the bottom. Here it is. So that's my new floor plan. So now that's available to me. It's a reference or it's a resource that I can use. I can reuse, and I can use that as a background image in my network maps. So how do we actually create the network map and add things to it? So there are really 4 steps to it. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to leave this. I'm not going to, just read the PowerPoint verbatim, but let's switch on over, back over here to opCharts. I'm going to go Views, Maps. So there are several different types of maps that can be created in opCharts. You can create a topological map, which it actually shows live device status and connects your devices together using layer 2 and layer 3 information. You can create a geographical map, which uses Google Maps to drive a geographical background and places all of your devices on it based on their location settings, so their longitude and their latitude, or their geolocatable name. Or you can create network maps, which is what we're going to create today with a background image. So I'm going to hit the add button here. I'm going to go ahead and select network map as my map type. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to select my background image. 301 4th floor. So here's my background image. So we're going to give it a name, and we're going to give it a title. Now the name is actually the file name that we want to store this under, and we really don't want to have kind of unallowable characters, because all of these names will show up in the URL. So we want to have names that make sense, but don't include backslashes, forward slashes, white space that are in there, because all of those will have to be escaped out by the system when it goes to render it. And then there may, of course, be challenges with rendering things depending on the browser and the operating system you have. So now that I've got this map laid out here with the background image added to it, what I want to do is I actually want to be able to add some devices to the top of this map and then put them in a couple of different locations on here. So for example, down here in the bottom left, I'm going to hit add node, and I'm going to add an individual device to this map. So one of the things I want to do is I want to add this little router called Asgard. I'm going to leave it with a display name, and I'm going to leave it icon as auto for now, and we're going to hit add. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So that's pretty big. That's pretty atrocious. I can only stick one of those in one of these rooms, and it kind of blocks the entire room. So let's go ahead and edit that for a moment. And I'm going to change the icon. I'm going to actually change that to an alternative one that we have down here called the status tick cross. Again, I'm going to leave the display name as Asgard. Now you'll notice that that's gotten really kind of small now. Okay, that's a little manageable at this point. But I'm not sure I really want to have that name on there. So I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to hit edit again. And I'm just going to blank out display name. I'm going to leave that blank. I don't have to put a space or anything in there. I'm just going to leave it as is. And so that just gives me that icon. And I can put this anywhere I want to within this graphic. So I'm actually going to place this down here in the comms room where Asgard is. So Asgard's down here in the comms room. I'm just going to place it right there. And I want to add a group of icons. So we actually have a bunch of equipment in one of our rooms, one of our offices. So I'm going to hit add group, and I can search through this. Now this is actually, when you hit add group, it's actually pulling the list of devices assigned to the NMIS group metadata tag directly from NMIS. And so we're going to look through this, and I'm going to pick the Charlotte group, and I'm not going to add anything here. Again, I'm going to pick icon. I'm going to pick the status tick cross, and I'm going to hit add. And those are all up and running. And I'm going to put those in room 447, which is my office here. And now what I want to do is I actually want to connect these two rooms together. I want to actually add a live linking line between these two things. Now down here in the bottom left corner, I have the option of adding a link, which is literally just a graphical line that connects two things. Or I can add an interface link. Now the difference is an interface link actually references a specific interface of one device. And so I'm going to start a link source from Asgard. It's asking me what device I want to get the interface information from. Now it's important to understand that I don't have to, I can actually draw a line between Asgard and my office that actually uses information from a device that's not anywhere on this map at all. The system will automatically pick a resource, the interface resource, and then it'll give me a full list using the common names of the interfaces. These are actually the descriptions of those interfaces. And so this is going to be the Opmantic LAN. And the link destination, what's the other device? So link source and link destination are the two connection points of the line. Node is the actual device that has the interface on it that I want to draw the line about. If I want to display a name here, I can. So for example, I might want to put LAN. I'm going to hit add. Now it's drawn a line here on the screen, and I can move this anywhere I want to go. So I can leave this up here if I want to, or I might be able to see it, because if I leave this laying on the screen, you might get lost. So I can actually pull this up here. I'm just going to leave that right there. So now I've got a map type. I have a map name, a floor plan of the Charlotte offices. at 301 Executive University Executive Park. I have a title that's going to show up in the title bar. I have the background image, and I have all the devices I want. Now I can add as many devices as I want to this. They can be nodes, they can be groups, they could be custom groups. A note on custom groups: if you add a custom group, so for example, if I wanted to add a custom group and I wanted to have this custom group based on, I don't know, let's say a business service that we might have. So for example, I want to see the email business service group, and I want to make that a status tick as well. And I want to call that email just so I have a display on it. And I want to add that. The system will draw for me a big, ugly gray box. Now, when I save this and it actually goes to display it, it'll change this and actually calculate out what that custom group's values are. So I'm going to hit Save Map. We might adjust this in a minute when we see what this looks like. So there's my email system down here, and it's actually showing up in room 485. I don't want that in that room. So we can actually throw this back into edit mode again. So in the top right corner, I can hit edit. And let's just move that email. Now that that's calculating out properly, we can move that. And I could even add a link line between Asgard and the email system if I wanted to. So that's really how easy it is to create a network map and be able to zoom in, zoom out, see how these things do. Again, this is all live information. So I've got all the performance information from these pieces. And of course, for example, from here with Charlotte, it's got 3 of 3 degraded. I can click on the title and I can drill directly in and I can get to those devices. So heading back over to PowerPoint. So how do we take this one individual component or network map and add them together with other pieces to make a dashboard? So there are a couple of different ways to do that. Again, I'm going to head back over to opCharts. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start creating a dashboard by looking at a map. So in this case, I'm going to open up the 301 University Executive Park. Now this is very, very horizontal in nature. And I'm going to take this, and in the top right corner, I'm going to hit add to dashboard. Now the system's going to ask me which dashboard I want to add this to. But you know what? I want to create a new dashboard. So I'm going to hit new dashboard. I'm going to hit save. opCharts will then create a new dashboard and open the dashboard editing tool. So this little itty bitty component now is actually that map, or it's the holder, it's the component for where that map will go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stretch it out a little bit. So let's say that we're going to maybe start with something that looks maybe like this. And I can add more columns. Right now there's only 4 columns in this. Let's go ahead and let's make that 7. And then I can stretch this out a little bit further. There we go. It gives me a little more granular ability with this. And now what I also want to do is I want to add a second map. And I'm going to add a map that I already created earlier. I'm going to stretch this out just so I can see the options that are here. I'm going to select maps. Now it's going to give me a list of all the maps that are on this server. And I want to get this UAE ATAPCO layout map. And what I'm actually going to do is I want to make this one on the right-hand side of the screen so I can drag these around. And if I wanted to, I can add more pieces down here at the bottom. So there's a lot more I can do. If you're interested in understanding a bit more about doing overall dashboard development, we do have a couple other webinars that are available in the Learn or blog portion of the opmantic.com website. I'm going to hit Save Dashboard. I'm just going to call this the UAP, University Executive Park. There we go. Now I can assign this to a group. So the nice thing is let's say that you have people who are in your call center. you could create a call center group and assign this dashboard to the call center. And then anybody who starts looking at any of the maps in the call center group can then switch very, very quickly with a drop-down list box. I'll show you what that looks like. We're actually going to add this to the operators group. I'm going to hit save, and then it's going to immediately render that dashboard. So now you see on the left-hand side, you actually have a graphical background. Again, this was provided to us courtesy of Etapco. We appreciate them greatly. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see that we have the floor plan for this building. And so here in the left-hand side, and let me just grab my pen here. Here is building 301. This is the 4th floor. That's our building over here. And so if I click here, I've got that Asgard router. There we go. And I can see that connection, and I can see the WAN DSL link that's actually going to this other building over here where our support staff are located. And here I can see my comm room. So there's Asgard again. And I've got my local LAN link, which comes back to my office here. And then we've got the email equipment down in this end. Now, one piece that we didn't touch on, one of the options when you set up these little widgets, when you assign and when you add these devices, is to set a link. And so you'll notice on the bottom of this one, we've actually created a link. We've assigned a link to this device. So we're actually linking that to another map. Now you could link that to really any other website. So we've got some clients who link to dashboards. It might link to other servers. It might link to an instance of Augmentic's NetFlow and IP fix analysis tool, opFlow, for example. So you could do all kinds of links, whether it's to the same server, to an outbound server, to a specific resource, a specific map or dashboard or interfaces list, whatever you want to do. But just how that works, if I just click on that, it'll come here, and you can actually tell that link to open in a blank tab or in a new window, or I could simply right-click on it and use the browser's own contextual ability to bring up a little pop-up contextual menu and then select open in new tab. So lots of options there. And then of course I can see this is the building across the way actually. So I can see all the different pieces that are over there as well. Now we mentioned the ability of grouping pieces together, and I just use the browser's back button, by the way, to get back to this dashboard. I added this dashboard that we created, the UEP dashboard. I added it to the operators group. And so you'll see on the left-hand side, there's actually a whole list now of other dashboards. And so, for example, we've created custom dashboards that are pulling background images from the National Weather Service every 20 minutes. It's updating the background image on the fly, and then we even have states of devices on those background images. And of course, all of these types of resources, you can zoom in and zoom out, just as you can with the floor plan background pieces. I mentioned the concept that you can build geographic maps as well. So here's an example of a geographic map on the top left, a weather map on the top right with a background image that's driven from the National Weather Service again, and then we've added in some events. So these are the ongoing events in the system right now. And of course, you can even break down even further if you want to and do things like monitoring applications, application services, user experience, generating synthetic transactions, monitoring third-party. In this case, this is Telstra. It's an ISP in Eastern Australia. It provides our internet connection to our demo server, which is in Brisbane, Australia. And so we're monitoring the response time of Telstra to make sure that Telstra meets their SLA with Augmentic. So lots of different pieces that are here, and I've grouped all these pieces together as services that someone who holds the operator role in my organization might find beneficial in troubleshooting a problem. That concludes today's webinar. I want to thank you all very much for your time and attention. Feel free to reach out to me. My email address is markh@augmentic.com, or you can give me a call. That is my direct cell phone number. So feel free to ring us up, and we'd be happy to help you out as you're exploring what augmented solutions can do for you. Thank you.